Alrighty, welcome to the Hookup Baits podcast. This is one without JoJo this time, so I'm going to be the host on this one. And with my good pals, Cowboy Cash.
What's up?
And Tom Troop.
Yo, yo.
Team Bay Basher.
Cool.
Yeah. So, this one is it's a week later from when these guys won Angler of the Year for the second time in a row for the SBS Saltwater Bass Series Rookie Division. And they did that by winning the tournament also. So it was a double win day. Got a big check and finalized the Angler of the Year with a great showing. Actually got the second biggest limit of the whole tournament, Masters and Rookie. You guys just completely slayed it. So tell me about that. Tell me about the season, actually. Just what your goal was at the beginning of the season and the way you played the season, and then coming up into that last tournament that got you the Angler of the Year. And then we have championship coming up in a couple weeks, and what's your game plan for that?
Okay. Well, I think Cash and I both had put some time in. Yeah, that's kind of our deal, right, Cash? Like, we put a lot of time in the area where the tournament's going to be.
I mean, personally myself, I gotta get closer.
Yeah.
Personally myself, I don't feel 100% comfortable unless we get at least kind of 3 pre-fishes in, because I've noticed. I mean, I know there's guys that'll walk in there and not pre-fish at all and catch 25 or just kill it.
Yeah. Those are guys that have been tournament fishing that area for 20 years.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes, exactly. But I always feel better just knowing, like, okay, I know this condition's gonna bite, and as a lot of people have known, pre-fishing, it can help you and like help you win a tournament, or it can kill you. And pre-fishing will help you. It's.
Yeah. You guys pre-fish more than anybody in
Right.
the series, and there has been a couple tournaments where you guys absolutely killed it because of your pre-fishing.
Yeah.
I mean, if you didn't put that 3 to 5 days on the water, what you did was not what you would have done.
Right. I totally agree. There's a few things that like why we do what we do, because first of all, Saltwater Bass Series introduced us into a whole bigger footprint of area to fish, So when we got introduced to other arenas other than San Diego, or places that we knew, we're like, wow, we better go figure that place out a little bit. And then he and I fish a minimum of 1 full day, sun up to sundown, every weekend. So what better use during the tournament time to go check these venues out, As soon as he puts out the schedule, if it's a place we've never been to, we're kind of like, wow, we should figure something out. This year, and it kind of showed, Long Beach was the thing we were most nervous about. We were like, man, we just fail in Long Beach all the time. So Cash is like, we got to figure out the spotties there, because we kind of knew what our weaknesses were. The range is one big thing that's one of our weaknesses, because our boat trouble, we end up going 6 miles an hour a lot of the time. With Jerry having a smaller like harbor tour on the first 3, that kind of leveled the playing field for us. We're like, cool. So we put a lot of time at Newport, and we smoked Newport. Man, our pre-fishing at Newport was great. I mean, I think Chad actually went with us sometimes.
Yeah, well, we did that Christmas tournament like it was a month or 3 weeks before, and we won that tournament, the 3 of us together.
So we're super confident in that, and that might be an example of where the pre-fish bite changed. And it turned out
that totally screwed us on our thing too. It's what we were doing for the last month was not the same thing on tournament day at all.
Right, and so there was a tsunami going on. You never know what's going to happen. Helicopters warning us to leave, and we're like, well, we're not leaving until any of the other boats leave. It comes off the radio, we'll leave. But so that started us off, I would say, on a bad foot. We got 7th place. We really had felt in our hearts we'd probably be top 5, just based on what we had been doing there. And so we're like, oh, man, we got to put a showing, at the next one. And honestly, we went the next day after that tournament to Long Beach. And we're like, let's go check Long Beach out. And there was an option to gain 5 extra points this year in the season for end of the year qualification towards the championship if you caught 3 species in 3 of the tournaments. So that was our plan. We're like, we're gonna get a sand bass with our eyes closed in Long Beach. We know that. Let's focus on calicos and let's focus on the spotties. And we learned some real valuable stuff about spotties in Long Beach, right? Like, what was the big change that we picked up?
I mean, the big change that I noticed was, in San Diego, you're catching spotties in almost 45, 50 feet of water, And, we'd go up to the docks and those outer pilings just coming into the slips. You'd get sand bass, but the way we figured out, you have to go all the way to the back, where the dock, imagine the dock shaped like a U. You have to go all the way to the back end and fish the shallowest area you possibly can. And we noticed that we were like, wow, we're getting a lot more, legal spotties and just spotties in general than we were before. And, we tweaked a few things, kind of like, okay, we need to, you need to just fish differently. Because, I mean, it's, the way we thought of spotties is San Diego and Mission Bay. You're fishing pilings. They're going to eat almost the same way every time.
Yeah. So the spotties in Long Beach act totally different than spotties in San Diego.
Totally. Shallow water, less than 20. Like, so we always kind of draft like a little formula. We'll be like, okay, so spotties are best on high tide in less than 20 feet of water. That was our thing. When all the little stuff that they eat on the rocks or the docks or whatever is all available for them, and in less than 20 feet of water. And then we found some areas in the inner harbor because we were like catching no spotties and stuff that was like San Diego spotty magnets, and we're like, okay, we got to change something. So we changed the zone by fishing the inner harbor, and we were just, that was the first trip, and we were just high-fiving spotties. Oh, we got spotties here now. Oh, cool. We really felt like we cracked the code on that. And then we were like, dude, but what's up with the calico? Like, how are we going to get a calico? I still will not say where we caught that calico because, oh my gosh, our first cast of the Long Beach tournament was a little sand bass. Second cast, biggest fish of the tournament. I don't know if the other guys got. Oh no, biggest rookie fish.
Yeah,
it was a 5-pound sand bass. No, or sorry, a 5-pound calico.
Yeah.
And we're like, there's the calico, bam, right away. Super excited. That spot was a high tide spot as well. So once we kind of crossed the calico off the list, we're like, dude, let's go hit the spotty spots. Go in there, this guy.
And, once he got that calico, I was like, wow, we got a really good bag. And then, I got some nice sand bass. So I'm like, okay, we're looking all right. We're about 9-10 pounds. I'm like, all right, cool. And I knew we needed another big sand bass, but that's besides the point.
We need the spotty. We're heading to get the spotty.
And we're heading to get the spotty. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this. And I had just gotten a brand new Shimano Stratic 3000. I'm like, okay. So we pull up to our spot. I make a cast. Kid you not, first cast. Hook it. I'm like, oh, that's a nice one. Reel it. Legal spotty. I'm like, wow.
It was a bomb cast. Was like. Yeah. And in pre-fishing, Cash had casted into outer space and hooked something above us,
Yeah.
But so this one, he just freaking, and I remember seeing it hit. It was 6 feet away from the rocks. It was a little closer than I would have gone. I always see what he's doing, and it's usually different than
so you let
what
him do
I
his
think.
thing.
So I noticed what he's doing. It's tighter than I would have cast, and it's way farther than I would have cast with 8-pound test.
I was around 15.
Okay, still light line in jetty rock or boiler rock, whatever you call it. That just doesn't match.
Yeah.
So he hooks this thing from really far out, and he fought it all the way in. And when he got it, Cash does this thing the only thing we try to keep on the down low when we catch something good in a tournament, right? But when Cash gets one, just like the cowboy, two hands down at your hip,
I've seen it plenty of times.
Yeah, you just boom, So, when we hit that, we had 5 fish already at that point. It was 8:30 in the morning. We had 5 fish. We had a bag, but then he got the triple. So now we have the trifecta, and we're just like, let's go fun fish, man. Let's go back to the other spotty spots we had and try to get a bigger one. And we put a little time in for the bigger ones, and we weren't getting them. And we're like, let's get out of here because we're going to upgrade better on sand bass or a calico. Our chances of getting a 3-pound something else than a spotty is probably greater if we're target something else. So we went back out. We got one more good sand bass, and we're like, dude, we got a pretty good bag. We came in, and we won it. Our first win. That was our very first win. We've done it this is our 4th year. That's our first place. So we were ecstatic,
Yeah, and I was really so happy. It was just, I mean, there was so many times where I've like, my gosh, we got a good bag, and then it's like, oh, we just got beat by like 5 pounds, and then this tournament, I was just thinking, I'm like, just come on, we fished long enough, we've been through enough. Come on.
We put a lot of hard work on Long Beach. So
and you guys pre-fished at least, 6 trips?
We did it a lot. So we did it the weekend of that last tournament and then went through. So then we felt pretty good about fishing in Long Beach. And we love Long Beach outside. That was like right with our program. We love those spots. But the inside harbor thing was very intimidating to us. So we were glad we worked that out. And then I think the next one was it San Diego?
Yeah, the San Diego.
So we were like high-fiving. And we're like, San Diego, yeah. Honestly, San Diego, it being an area that we knew, this was something I learned. I don't know if Cash feels the same way. We felt so spot rich in San Diego that we're like, well, if they're not biting here, we'll go there. If they're not biting here, we'll go there. And then that is the one thing we looked back on and was like, that broke our formula of stay in one spot, one zone, and just dig in, We were commuting around because we felt like we had hot little spots to hit. And we didn't do so hot. What did we get on that?
No, we had like
sixth. Fifth again, but we were like, oh. And like we were doing all right based on the field. Like we had run into some of the other front runners and they're like, what do you got? And, everybody's like.
Yeah, it was,
whatever.
It was tough fishing that day. But I mean, and that's where my pre-fishing and then what I did on tournament day, I started with my pre-fishing plan. What I figured out from pre-fishing, and I only did that for like an hour, maybe 2, and I was like, okay, this is totally changed. It's not happening, and then I totally changed my whole program to where I went, totally the opposite direction, and it worked out for us. We ended up with second, just barely got into second on that one. So.
And Danny, the other hookup bait, they got first in the Masters. That was pretty cool. And then Justin, who was kind of like. I think he and his team and our team were kind of in the front end of things. We were both like neck and neck from what he had said at that like 3/4 of the way mark. And the tide rolled and they were just up from us and a calico bite opened up and a lot of people just limited out on calico. Joe Deller did really good with his partner. Justin did awesome with his partner and it would push us back. I'm like, okay. But one thing we got a lot of is fight, so we were like, okay, cool. What's next?
Yeah,
was it MDR from there?
Marina
Which
Del
that
Rey.
is just like MDR. Honestly, my favorite place. Everybody, if you haven't been there, it sucks. Don't go there.
Yeah, don't go to Marina Del Rey. Fishing's terrible there.
Catch a lot of sculpin. in there.
There's a huge variety of places to fish there, and you don't have to have a boat that gets you really far. So we were like high-fiving on that because we like that, and that we were going to go pre-fish in a place that's fun. And so we did. The spotty bite there was just like bananas every time we went through. But we were kind of off that catch-all 3 kick because we did that on the Long Beach one and didn't really. We found out, we thought that was for Angler of the Year points, and we found out at that point that.
Just a qualifying.
Yeah, it's qualifying points. We're like, oh, dude.
You already qualified by winning the tournament.
Right. So that was over, and now we're like, we just need big fish. So we go to work on a deeper bite. The boat had been running well, and we're like, oh, dude. If we can hit the first spot and then go down to PV, it's on, We get to the first spot, we start fishing, and we're like, okay, we got 5 fish. Let's go to PV. And we're like, 6 miles an hour. Okay, nope.
It's not happening.
So we just plugged in, fished right there in like the 80 to 90-foot zone, and then went and drifted some ARs, and, Cash did all the heavy lifting. I honestly probably had one of the worst days of fishing in that tournament. I would caught like probably got like a chucklehead, a sculpin, and like 1 sand bass, And Cash caught every fish that we used for that bag there, and we got second there.
Yeah, we got second. Right. Yeah, and the funny thing about that tournament was, I noticed there was a lot of guys. There were some guys in the pipe, and I talked to them later, and they're like, "Oh man, I was only catching like 14 inches, and I didn't say anything." I'm like, "Well, that's because you weren't fishing that little bit deeper."
Yeah.
All the guys like to fish 60, but I'm gonna be honest with you, 60 don't always play.
No.
That day it was like you're out at like 100, you're gonna get them.
Especially early season when the water's still cool, they're gonna be out in the deeper edge.
They're somewhere, they're not gone. They're somewhere, so they're either deeper or you just gotta look around.
Exactly.
So. And then that puts us in the 4th one, which is
Then after that was the calico only.
Oh, then it
last
was
week.
calico only, which Cash and I'll speak for myself. Calico are my favorite fish to catch. They're to target anyways. Obviously, if I get a yellow, that's awesome. But, I mean, I have, like, an affection for them. They're our Southern California fish, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And so it was like, awesome. Let's go do our thing. We'll go out to the horseshoe, and we'll go see, you know, because last year the horseshoe was like a just gimme spot. You go out and you get 5. They might not be great, but you get 5. We go to the water had been turning a lot this year.
Yeah, a lot of wind.
The wind and the cold water. We go out, it's just crickets. Every spot that we had that was like a freaking cash drawer was gone. We're like, there's no fish here. Like, it's not like they're not biting. There was no fish there. We're like, okay, let's go deeper. Oh my gosh, they're not here. Oh my gosh, let's go deeper. And then now I'm scratching my head like, where are they? So the one
and it took how many trips to figure that out?
No, we went every trip, and we had no success except on the wall.
Yeah.
And inner harbor, you know, little here or there. You know, so we're like, dude, are we really going to be doing an inner harbor calico only when we are catching 14 to 16-inch calicos, you know? And I'm like, we'll get 5, but dude, it's not what we want. We want to go through numbers. We want to get a lot of fish. That's kind of our thing. We'll get to a spot where there's a lot of fish. If we can get a lot of fish, then eventually you're going to get one that's decent.
Yeah, exactly.
So, last pre-fish, we had been out and we had fished. I was even calling into, like, I text the fish report for Bloody Decks with Eric, and I was like, yo, if you're putting a report together, for me, it's the worst calico fishing I've ever had. So it's funny he mentioned it. And then the last trip, we always try to, like I said, we always try to find formulas. So we were out, and we're pretty kind of entry-level basic. We figure stuff out. And then sometimes we don't know what we figured out until later and we think about it. And the year prior, Matt Kobseff sat down next to us and was talking to us about fishing at the horseshoe. And that's where we had fished. And Matt broke it down like so eloquently, like the way he said it. We were just like I didn't even get, like, he's like, okay, so I fished the wall. Then when it went slack, I ran out to the chute. Because when it goes slack, all the bait rises. And then when the current starts coming again, I'm going to go hit on the low relief. And then I'm like, what's low relief? And he's like, the low spots. And I'm like, we're just like, that was the same thing we had figured out and we're doing. So we were trying to duplicate that type of magic. You know, was it bait, low spots, whatever? And then the last trip, we were like, whatever, let's just go get a sand bass. Like, we had already got to about 90 feet, and we're like, dude, there's no calico. And we went out to like 100, 110, and I'm like, Cash, we're driving over fish right now, and there's a high spot, and we're just driving on. I'm like, we're still driving over fish right now. Like, I think we're over the fish. Like, I think they're here. And we had so many false alarms with that before because of kelp or whatnot. And
Perch
we're just like,
or whatever.
Yeah, perch, yeah. And so Cash drops down, bam, got a 5-pounder, dude. And we're like, we found him, boom, another cast, bop, bop. And we're like, done. Don't touch them, you know. And then we drove around, and what put it together for us on the last tournament, this was the winning formula. At least 100 feet of water with a high spot, and then the pyrosomes. They're these little little things that float in the water, and they're orange. Around spawn time, they're just floating everywhere, and it's like a candy bar for the fish. They just munch them. So we figured out the 3 things were, again, thank you, Matt Kobseff. High tide goes slack, starts to fall, that movement picked up. That was when we got on the high spots where there was the pyrosomes, and it was just freaking bap, 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 just on fire, you know? We put those 3 things together every time, it was just on fire. And we would see people coming out through the shoe, and we're like, oh, just keep your rod low, like, don't celebrate, like, don't really, you know. I kept cast fishing the whole time, and I would play fish doctor, because that way it didn't look like we were both working on a good one, like, oh, we got a good one. So we just kind of did that, and then we'd see people coming, and they were just, it sucked so bad on the inside, they would be like, no more.
They would hit that 90-foot zone and
say peace, yeah. And then we came in to the 80-foot zone, and it was bad. And then we turned around and went back out to a little area that we had never fished, but same conditions, and it just went bananas.
Yeah, and I mean, it was to the point I mean, I'm not trying to be like, oh my god, he was, you could not let that bait sink 35 feet without getting bit. Like it was, dude, it was mindless.
And this was the day
fishing.
that a lot of people had had problems even catching a limit of bass.
Yeah,
and you guys are just on them.
It was extremely tough till
That's
we
awesome.
found that spot, and then we just fun fished for the rest of the day, and it was so fun. The other thing that we pre-fish for is obviously logistics. How long does it take to get from point A to point B in a boat that goes 6 miles an hour? Well, we did that on the last tournament, and it took us an hour and 45 minutes to get back in from the outside horseshoes.
Oh,
so we're
God.
like, okay, number one, we're not going to go inside. We're going to do the straight line back to the harbor, and we need to leave 2 hours before we get back. So we, on the last tournament, we got big fish for rookie. We got the biggest bag, and we won it. And we fished 2 hours less than
everybody else.
So we were pretty stoked.
That's the beauty of fishing with the Bay Basher boat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not only do you have to put a game plan together of fishing, but a game plan together of what's going on with the boat that day.
Right.
That's awesome. Oh my God. So, what's the game plan for championship? Don't give up your whole game plan, but that's to worry about. What are you guys thinking?
We already got Angler of the Year. I know. I mean, championship from here is just fun.
Yeah.
I've spent 5 tournaments wondering if we're gonna get Angler of the Year. You know what I'm doing now? I'm gonna have fun. Okay. And because I know all the guys are like, well, don't you have fun every tournament? I do, but unless you fish tournaments and you're at this point where we're like, wow, we could really get Angler of the Year, and I'm very competitive.
Mm-hmm.
I do not like losing at all. And a lot of these guys, they're like, well, I just do it for the fun, and I get it. Every time I go in a tournament, I want to win.
Oh, yeah.
I want to win. And once that's over, and you're like, I got it. We got, it's just the beauty of that is just pure bliss. Because, I go, I can fish 2 days just for fun. I don't care if I weigh 25 pounds or 2. Probably not going to weigh 2, but I'm going to go out and have fun.
Nice.
I'm going to catch, thank you. I've had enough.
Yeah.
It'll be fun.
Your year is complete for you. You have the championship that you're going and you get to fish it. That's all cool, but winning it is you're not expecting.
That was our big goal, was Angler of the Year. And then now our next goal is over 20 pounds on a bag. So that's, if we do that in the championship, cool.
Yeah, that's cool. That's awesome. All right, Cash. Let's hear some info about you.
Well,
How long you been fishing?
That's actually a great question, Chad. I started fishing the first time when I was about 5. This is something people might not believe. I did catch a largemouth bass the first cast of my life. This is very very vague knowledge. I never been too good up here, but. Dude,
with your brain thinking?
Yeah, my brain thinking is not superb. But, I cannot remember. I know where it was. I almost remember it, but, this is so long ago.
5 years old.
It's a long time
to remember, yeah.
Golf course pond.
But, I did that, and I was like, oh, that's okay. And it was funny. I never was big on team sports as a kid. I never was one of those kids that was like,
soccer and baseball and all that.
No, I never was big on that, because I don't know what it was. I've never been like a guy like, oh man, I got to be with the pack. I've always kind of been like, you know what, I kind of want to, branch off.
Are you saying you're a loner?
No, not a loner. You check my phone. I ain't a loner.
Maybe a rebel.
Rebel more than anything. Yeah, rebel. Exactly. But, I've always, and then after that, I kind of went through a lot of phases. As a kid, I was a weird kid. I loved history, dude. Like, it was, like, that was my thing. I could get into it so much. There'd be times, because I loved World War II. I could get like my little tanks or whatever, and I like line them all up, mess with them. Dude, I could be in there for 2 hours and just nerd out on that. You know, I was in my own world. You know,
Playing war.
playing war. You know, I love that, and
Wow.
you know, it was. And you know, I never was. You know, it was kind of weird. You know, my whole life I've been called like kind of Benjamin Button. You know, I don't have any brothers and sisters, but they're like, my mom's like, yeah, you could talk like perfect when you were like 1 year old. I'm like, all right, that's cool.
We call that having an old soul.
Yeah, I call it Benjamin Button. I like that better. But you know, I liked that for a while. I really, you know, the first thing I got into that I actually got competitive at was video games. You know? Loved video games, man, and because I always would want to do better. Like I'd be like, okay, you know, I had this kill streak. I want to see if I can double that or triple that, and I always loved that. And you know, I wanted to see how good I could get. You know, I always wanted to play at the hardest setting, and you know, I wanted to see how good I could get, and that was cool for a while. But you know, you grow out of it. You know, you're not gonna love that forever. And then we moved around a bit when I was a kid. And then when we moved up to Temecula, you know, that's I kind of feel that's when all the big events started happening in my life, you know. And you know, I really got into, you know, I was still really into history, but you know, I kind of just you know, really I didn't do much for a few years, you know.
It was bikes. That
bikes,
was the thing.
yes.
Temecula.
You know, yeah, everybody rode dirt bikes. If you live up there, you know. And I really got into BMX, and I was like, oh man, this is cool, you know. And I learned, like, man, I'm not bad at this, you know? And, dude, this is on a different note. And, you know, I kind of felt like I was Superman for a little bit. Dude, there was so many times that I've, like, took nasty spills on bikes that I should have, like, been, like, paralyzed for the rest of my life. And I survived, and I was fine, dude. Like, there's been times where, like, I landed, like, flat on my head, and I'm just like, all right, cool.
When you're a kid, you bounce.
Yeah.
Dude, he threw it over the
You're
bars
pretty
so
bulletproof
hard.
when you're a kid.
Yeah.
One day he came hauling down the street, and he like, I don't know, he didn't try to bunny hop or anything. He just freaking slammed in the curb, went straight over the bars, ragdolled, and I'm just like, he's dead. You know? And he's like, thank God. Thank God.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I'm like, oh, scrape my elbow, you know. That's about all that happened there. But you know, I was really into that for a while, and then I don't know. Well, for the longest time, I mean, he was really into skateboarding. I never was. I mean, I like step on a skateboard. I'm like, feel like I'm about to break every bone in my body.
I'm the same way.
Yeah,
I'm
like,
I've never been about skateboards.
Yeah, like, or I see this little kid that's like twice as young as me doing all these crazy backflips, and he's like, yeah, I broke like 13 bones in my body at one time. I'm like, that sounds fun. Let me get you thing and wheel you around. But you know, I was just like, nah, I ain't doing that. But he loved it, and you know, we'd hike out to all these like little pools and stuff, and you know, I that's where I grew up, man. There was some cool stuff that happened there.
We dug out the Paula pool. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah, there was some.
Well, that's where we met Josh, who became our. Yeah. Well, you didn't even get into saying how you started fishing.
Yeah.
Well,
we're still working on that.
Yeah,
working up to it.
I told you, I ain't
fast
good
forward into the skating already.
Yeah, but you know, I just one day I kind of thought, I'm like, well, no. He actually asked me, if there's anything you could do today, what would you want to do? You know, and I know I was probably, you know, the day before that I probably rode my bike or something. I don't know, but you know, I just thought, I'm like, let me try fishing, man. You know, let me try this again. And you know, if you live in Temecula, you know, I went to this place called Lake Harveston. Dude, I had a push button ugly stick. I was like 7 years old, and I went there, and dude, I tore it up, dude. And I was like, to the point where I was like, God, this is fishing. You know, you're catching fish.
Fun, yeah.
This is fun, man. And you know, I love catching bluegill, man. I mean, I'd catch 30, 40 bluegill in a day. And you know, after that, I was like, okay, you know, I kind of want something bigger. This is just my weird luck. And my dad's like, all right, let me take you to a place where I've caught some big fish before. And this is around the time my dad's telling me all these old fishing stories, and this is actually a fun fact. Now, you know, him and my mom used to go fishing together, basically. And my mom showed me this picture. She's like, hey, I want to see this, honey? And it's like a picture of her holding like 2 6.5-pound bass. She's like, oh, these are pretty nice. I'm like, Mom, do you know how big these are? I'm like, these are some seriously big fish. I mean, you know, she killed it, dude. And, you know, I was like, okay, let's try this place. And, you know, I was throwing plastic, learning how to throw a plastic worm, dude. I was having a ball, man. Catching bass, bluegill, and then after that, I kind of sat down on this little park bench to have lunch, and this still old ugly stick, push button reel, put it in the rod holder, and casted out some beef liver, something nasty for like a catfish or something. And I kid you not, that thing was in the rod holder for like, God, 5 minutes. I'm eating my lunch. Specifically, I was eating my chips. Rod just completely tacos. And I don't know. I was a dumb kid. I don't know about fishing. I was like, oh, what's that, man? I don't know what's going on there. And he's like, come on, don't get the rod. You're bit. And I was like, I looked at him. I'm like, Dad, I'm eating my chips. And he's like, okay.
My chips are more important than the bite going on.
I didn't know, dude. I told you I ain't that great up here. I mean it, dude. And he's like, okay, here, and he like passed it to me, and I was like, what? I never hooked something that big before. I was like, this is weird. This ain't like a bluegill where it's like 2 reels and it's in, and it's running and doing all this stuff. And then like midway through the fight, I was kind of like, Dad, you want this? I didn't know what it was, so he knew how to fight a fish a lot better than I did.
Yeah. And
he got it in, and dude, this is to this day, the biggest catfish I've ever caught, dude. This thing was like bigger than me, and I'm checking it out. I'm like, that's the biggest fish I've ever caught. Oh my gosh, Dad. Well, and there's actually a video, an old GoPro video, and I'm like, I'm like, hey Dad, look, I just, I got a great, catfish and this and that, and let's put it in the water, yay! And
you sounded just like that.
Yeah,
I've seen the video.
Yeah, and we let it go.
Didn't you become like a catfish slayer? Like
Yeah.
Then
all
it's
about
like
the catfish.
99-cent store.
Bar-S hot dogs. Dude, I don't care what nobody says. They're like, no, you got to Beetler. No, you got to get Bar-S, dude.
Bar-S.
Bar-S hot dogs. I wouldn't eat them. But,
We're still looking for a sponsorship, by the way, Bar-S.
Yeah, exactly. And, dude, like, he had a fish tank for a while, and he had a little bullhead catfish, dude. It was gnarly. And, like, dude, if you drop that hot dog in there was like a stink trail that comes off this thing. Not Larry.
Was it Charlie or something?
Billy.
Billy the catfish.
Yeah. And he couldn't see too good, but he was all like when he would drop in, like he could like sense it, dude.
Yeah, he'd fire up.
Oh yeah, he'd fire up and he'd be like,
what does Shine call it?
The hot dog fever or something.
The hot dog dance.
Hot dog dance.
Like,
yeah.
You drop the dog in the tank, and if it didn't even see it, it just knew, and it was just like. It's just frantic until I got close enough to eat it.
Yeah,
oh wow,
it was crazy. But after that, I just got struck.
Okay, so then, how did you come about the hookup baits?
So I got to be honest with you, Mike Shine. Thank you. You've met him.
Mm-hmm.
He pretty much started me on saltwater fishing. He's took me actually. Let me backtrack a little bit. My first saltwater fish ever. We threw out some squid or something at the Carlsbad Lagoon. I don't even know. Was a white sea bass. The first saltwater fish I ever caught was a white sea bass. And at first I'm like, yeah, cool, it's a white sea bass. I don't know.
Yeah, whatever.
What is
What's
this
the big
thing?
deal?
Yeah, it's a fish, cool. It ain't a largemouth. But, and the more I talk to people, they're like, dude, you caught a white sea bass as your first fish? I'm like, yeah, I don't know. What'd you catch? He's like, dude, I've been fishing for 25 years. I've never caught one of those things. And I'm like, wow, crazy. And but then Mike Shine, he's like, all right, man, you want to catch some big fish? Let's go to Shelter Island. Let's throw out some squid, man. And, you're going to have a great time. And I think we did it. I don't think we caught very much that day, but I was like, God, this is so interesting. And I remember I, caught my first spotty. And, dude, I didn't know what I was doing, dude. I had, a freaking gulp sandworm and on a freaking big old drop shot wig. I had no idea what I was doing. And at the time I was like, man, I'm a pretty good fisherman. I can figure this out. No. And, he kept thinking rocks were fish.
Cash actually had a really good knack for catching fish. And it was like every time we went fishing, I was just like, it's not always going to be like this. You're not always going to catch fish. But everywhere we went, he kept doing it. So I was like, I just stopped saying it. I'm like, all right, dude, you're catching fish everywhere you go. That's cool, How do I sign up?
Yeah. But it was, and after that, we started spotty fishing more, and
how'd the hubs come in though?
Okay, well this is a great story actually. So there was one day, we were fishing Shelter Island, same area, the police station, aka the cop shop. We went there, And there was this kid, man. His name was Woods, and we had caught nothing, dude. We had a super rough day fishing. He's like, "Hey, man," and he goes, "Hey, you want a hookup bait?" I'm like, "What's a hookup bait?" I'm like, "I don't know what was this." And he hands me this little thing, and dude, this thing is so chewed. This guy's caught so many fish on it, and I was like, "All right, let me try this thing," dude. Literally first drop on a piling, I catch like a spotty, and I'm like, "What?" And then I literally had one hookup bait, okay, one. This thing was like gold to me, and it was weird. I caught that one, and then I got to the point where like I was fishing it too much, like a lot of people do.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, what am I doing wrong? And I was like, because I was used to fishing a swim bait where you constantly have to reel it.
Yeah.
And
So you were doing too much.
Way too much.
Yeah.
And I was fishing on a bait caster, dude. I didn't know what I was doing. And
Nothing wrong with that.
It works.
And I mean, Woods, if you're out there, man, you had a pretty big part in helping me, this. Yeah, I mean,
Awesome.
you're a cool guy, man.
Yeah, and thank you, Woods.
Yes, thank you, Woods.
Spreading the hub love.
Yeah.
Well, then it's the night spotty missions after that with hook. Once you got the hookup down,
and then we went to. I mean, everybody knows where it is.
we'll just say spots.
Spots. We went to Spots, and at the time, nobody fished Spots, dude. If you would have seen some of the things I've seen out of this place, your mind would be blown. You would literally see spotties free swimming along the rocks, chasing sardines. Like, dude, it was nuts. The whole hookup bait thing, I finally got a spinner, like a decent spinning rod. Dude, we got on those docks, and at the time, Spots was not a very nice place. There's always some old fishermen out there like, "Hey, get out of here, come on, get out." And,
grumpy crab fisherman.
grumpy old man, and he's like, and eventually, this one guy, odd guy, he was going nuts on us one day, and I'm like, he's real good with people. He's like, "Excuse me, sir, where do you usually fish?" And he's like, "I don't fish nowhere." And then, he eventually talked to me. 5 minutes later, this guy is fishing with my dad's rod, and he's like, "Oh man, I used to have one like this." And he's like, now he's like, "Oh, can we fish on the docks?" He's like, "Yeah, sure, just be safe." I'm like, "All right, got on this guy's good side."
I had like a second gen Corrado, and he's like, "I had one of those," and I'm like, "Go for it, bro!" And so then we made buddies.
And I didn't know what I was doing. I swear it was that day, dude. I was catching so many, and I was only fishing like 15-pound test. I still think about some of the ones I've lost there, dude. Because
What was your biggest one from there?
At the time, well, from Spots
In total,
3 pounds. 3 pounds, and I've
19-inch or
18
plus.
18 plus. I've caught 3 18-inchers out of there. One that was like 18 and a half, but
all in 1 year.
all in 1 year.
Wow.
I mean, there was
an
9
18-inch spotty is a big spotty.
Good spotty, yeah.
And that day I'll never forget, dude. I flipped on a piling. I get bit. It was just peeling drag, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, what is?" I boat flip it, and me and him, we've never seen a spotty this big. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, dude, this is how noob we were." We measured this thing with the Home Depot freaking measuring stick that you use like mixed paint with or whatever. Yeah, that's what we had, dude. And I measured. I was like, "That's a 16-inch spotty," and this thing was mean, dude. Big teeth, never been caught before.
Yeah.
And I mean, this thing was just a pig. And from there, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't live without spotties now, man," because it was just so much. You
They're fun.
You catch so many, and it's not. I mean, I was used to largemouth, dude, like 11 fish. I'm like, "Man, we killed it today." And then I'm like, "Dude, we just caught 35 fish in an hour, 1 hour, and they fight harder, they're bigger." I mean, it was just mind-boggling to me from what I came from, largemouth fishing. It was just nuts.
Well, I remember the video of you float tubing Dana Harbor, catching your first legal halibut. Yeah, all of a sudden I get this video on Instagram. This little chubby kid. I just got my first legal halibut, and it's going in my belly. I caught him on the hookup bait. That was awesome.
Oh man. So this is, I at that time, the story about that is like, "Oh, let's try Dana Point." Dude, I had one hookup bait, okay? So this thing, I'm like, I'm gonna swim for this thing if I get stuck. I was that same hookup bait, dude, and we're fishing the harbor.
Red crab quarter.
Red crab quarter. I fire a cast down there, and I get kind of stuck in the bush. I'm like, "Oh man, I pop it out, and I get bit. I'm like, oh, man, that's a nice fish. Just running. I'm like, man, I don't know. And I wanted to catch a big halibut, or halibut.
That's illegal halibut.
So bad.
Yeah.
And I was reeling it, and I just see this big brown flash. I'm like, Dad, I got a halibut. You know, and
Now,
you know,
look, Dad, I got a halibut.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
wrong accent. Yeah, but yeah, and he and I was like, oh my gosh, how am I gonna get it in? And I bring it up next to him. And he just gets the little like Rapala grips, I guess, and just flips it in my lap. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that was insane. You know, it's crazy.
That's awesome.
And there was this guy. I'm like, oh man, I just got this legal halibut.
You gotta have the voice right.
And this one guy's like, man, I'd get that out of here, dude. These seals don't mess around. And I'm like, what are you talking about, fine sir? He's like, nah, man, you gotta get out of here. These seals messing with you all the time. It's like 3-1 out here. It's gnarly. And you know, and I'm like, okay, well, let's paddle back to the ramp. And we measured it. And there was some guy that was scuba, and he's like, here you go, bud. Let me measure this with my Hobie measuring tape here. All right, you got it. And I didn't know nothing. And this guy, he's like, okay, well, you're going to do this. And he like...
Oh, we didn't know. We're like,
No.
you got to bleed it. Like, you got to bleed it and kill it. And the guy's like, yeah, he's like hammering on it with it all, like a pick. Like, I'm like, now that I look back, I'm like, yeah, that was like unnecessary. You know?
Yeah, this guy, and I was like, I'm like, oh man, sir, how'd you do that? And he has like this pick, and he's like, you poke fish one time. That's all you have to do. You know? And I'm like, oh, thank you, sir. You know, we put this thing on ice, you know, it's sitting in the truck, and we go back out fishing, and we were catching all kinds of sand bass, you know. Seals were super sketchy that harbor, and, you know, we just had a great day. And, you know, actually after that, I was always checking Hookup Baits, man. I'd go through the whole page. I'm like, gosh, man, look at this guy. This guy's catching a lot of big fish, man. And I noticed I was on the story, and I was like, what? Oh my gosh, I'm on the story. You know, I was freaking out, dude, because I
shared the story of you with the halibut, right?
Yeah. And I was like, what? You know, I was freaking out about that. And, you know, that really, like made
Yeah,
my...
do you know that was your start of your stardom ship right there,
huh?
Yeah. the beginnings of a star.
Yes.
And then how about when, like, so we shore pounded a lot, and we skiffed, rental skiffs. But what was the big difference of fishing when you got hooked up with Chad on your first grom of the month?
So, you know, as you said, I was used to fishing, you know, this little red skiffs, going to the pilings, and I love that, man. You know, I love fishing that and out of the boat. And you know, we felt pretty good about it. And, you know, Alec, Fishing Mission Bay on Instagram, you know, he's like, well, the Hookup Bait tournament came up, and I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta fish this. And I seen all this stuff. I'm like, man, this tournament's gonna be insane. And you know, we like, all right, we should fish it. Okay, let's see what we do. I was in the youth division. You know, the Hookup Baits, they had a great diversity of, you know, youth division, like shore, kayak. You're gonna get something no matter if you fish it. And I was like, man, I'm like, that's cool. And you know, I'll never forget, we showed up there early in the morning, like the earliest I'd ever gotten up, and I was like, gosh, man. And I'll never forget, I'm walking
the
down.
earliest you ever gotten up.
Early, dude. I got up like 3, you know.
We got up at like 2,
Really?
2:30. Yeah.
No, dude,
Got down there at like 4 or something
Yeah.
crazy.
You guys were ready to go.
We cracked it when you guys were showing up.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and you know, I'll never forget, we're walking down this, like, kind of this area between Dana and Hobie Kayaks, and I see Chad, and I'm like, oh my God, there he is. and it's almost like you're kind of starstruck. You're like, I'm like, Dad, I'm gonna say something to him. And he's like, yeah, come on, dude, you know, say what's up to him. I'm like, hi, Chad. Hi, Chad. And you're like, what's up, man? You know, and give me a nuggles and all. He's like, you're the kid that does number 1 and 2 on the Hookup Bait. I'm like, he's seen you. I'm like, you've seen that? And I'm like, and you know, he was like, yeah, I seen that. You know, it's cool. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, I love your business now. And you know, and I was like, man, he's like, yeah, you catch him good today, kid. And I'm like, I sure will. And yeah, we get checked in. I think Frank checked us in. You know, something got messed up. I'm just kidding with you. But yeah, we get there, and you know, Alex shows up, and he's like, hey man, what's up? And I never met this dude before. I'm like, all right, I'm about to go out in this dude's boat.
We did it all through Instagram.
Yo, really? You never met him in person yet?
No, absolutely
Wow.
not. And you know, he was all like, you know, he was a cool guy, and he's like, all right, let me take you to some of my spots. You know, he knew the bay pretty good, and we pull up there, like first cast, he gets
His boat's a converted sailboat.
It's a sailboat.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's a
Sailboat.
17-foot sailboat
Without
with
a
no
sail.
sail.
Yeah.
Skiffed up. It's sick.
Yeah.
It's called
A skiff.
the old
sailboat.
skiff.
the old skiff.
The old
So
that's,
sick.
That's awesome.
And he first cast, he gets his illegal halibut, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, yeah, this is a really nice fish.
Yeah, you got to make sure you keep getting the voice.
Yeah. And I make a cast like a 3/8 or something, and I just get slammed halfway down. I'm like, oh man, that's a nice one, Dad. And I get it. It's like illegal, and I'm like, all right, that's a nice one. And I catch a few others. Nothing huge. I catch a big old sculpin. I'm like, oh man, what's this? And Alex like, be careful, bro. That ain't no little fish to mess around with. It's poisonous. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Throw it back, and then I got a limit. Whatever fish I needed, and. The thing, I was like, okay, let's go back to the tournament. I didn't know nothing about tournaments. I mean, I was like, okay, let's go see what's up. Well, I did better than I thought. And, we get back. I got like a Tarantino hot dog or something. I don't know. And I'm just chilling there. And, the award ceremony, like, all right, come on, award ceremony time. And I'm sitting there, and I think Luke did really well.
Yeah, Luke and Ty. Yeah, they did. They did good. I think they got first or second or something like that.
Yeah, and I remember, they were about the same age as me, and I was like, man, that's cool, man. Those kids are smacking them. And I remember I was sitting there, and then they're like, you're like third place going to Cash Room. I'm like, what? And I was freaking out. I was like, yeah, doing whatever I was doing. I don't know.
And yet did you know?
Yeah. Yet did I know, man. And and then you go. I said something like, I can't even remember what I said. And I remember you said it's about to get. I'm like, oh, this is great. No, that's. And
we're all done giving your third place trophy, and you're like, thank you, and this and that. And I go, wait, but there's more.
Yeah, and you're like, it's about to get more great. You are elected Grom of the Month. I was like, no way.
Oh, yeah.
I had this big old cup of water. I'm like, yeah, flinging it all over the place. And
well, you did the.
Yeah, that's how I got that. Yeah, that's how I got that. I'm like, yeah, do that. And then,
you freaked out. It was awesome.
Yeah,
it was a pretty awesome moment.
That was a cool moment.
So,
and
I just by your character and everything else, and then how excited you get about things, I purposely saved that moment to share it with everybody that was there. It worked out perfect. You reacted exactly the way I thought you would.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
It was...
So then we went on the Grom trip. Your first real on a boat, catching big bass, catching stuff.
Hub boat experience, man.
Yeah, your first hub boat experience.
I'll never forget that, man. I remember, this is kind of a funny part of it. We get there super late. Of course, like all the other Groms, I didn't sleep a minute last night. I'm thinking, oh my gosh. I'm just doing this in my bed.
The Grom's always like, I didn't sleep at all last night.
Oh, yeah. Super hopped up. And, he's like, all right, I got to go to the bathroom. So I had to go in there with him. And I was like, oh, man. You kind of just stand in the corner. And he's like, all right.
The San Diego public bathroom tour with Dad.
I'm like, oh, man. I'm like, man, that stunk. And, we come out of there, and I just see the hub boat. It's like you know how when you see something, there's like an aura to it. It's like, oh, I see it. And I remember I was like, and I was a kid. I mean, I was little, and I was sitting, I'm like, that's like the biggest boat I've ever seen.
Was AC/DC playing in your head or something?
No, I don't even know what was playing in my head. But I seen it. I was like, oh my gosh! And you got out of the truck. You're like, hey, Cash, what's up, man? And I'm like, oh my gosh! And we brought way too much junk, dude. I'm like, all right, I got freshwater, I got top water baits, like 20 rods, so much junk that I wouldn't have needed now, like thinking about it.
I'm like, yeah, you don't need that.
And you're like, all right,
3 backpacks in the cooler.
Put all that stuff back in your truck.
Yeah, you're like, all right. It's like, you got a rod? And I'm like, yeah. And you're like, cool. All right, let's go. And we got in there, and this is funny. I want you to tell this part. Remember when you backed in the trailer? You remember that?
No, you go, man.
Okay, I'm not trying to embarrass you. Sorry. But I'll never forget where I got in the boat or something, and I could barely climb in the thing. And I'm sitting there like, wow, this thing's huge. And he's like, my dad's like, all right, I'm gonna back it in for you, man. And Chad's like, all right, cool. And we hear this something gnarly, like this big gnarly scrape, and we're like, and Chad's like, it's no problem. Somebody got a cut off the trailer. We're like, oh, okay.
Oh no, that was a different trip. That was when we were at Dana. When you had that thing underneath that would rub
that
on the
little
high
bracket
spot.
that would
That
rub
was a
at the top of
different
the
trip.
ramp. Yeah.
The other guys, all the hub crew put the boat in the water that day. We just got on.
Yeah, I think I had somebody that put the boat in for us.
Something I don't know.
But anyways, yeah, Dad did do that one time.
Yeah, and I got in, and we got in, man, and I was like, man, this is cool. I put all my rods up, and I had a bunch of stuff. I was sitting in the front, and we're coming out of the bay. I was asking a bunch of questions as usual, and I'll never forget, dude. We got to the 5 Mile buoy. This is before this 300 was like brand new. Dude, he puts it to the dash. This thing, boom, gone. I was a kid. I'd never been that fast on the water, and I was like, all the way down to the pipe. And,
Cash was like this on Chad.
he was scared. I'm like, you all right? I'm all right.
No, and the thing, that was the one time I've almost been seasick. I was like, what? I'm like, this is nuts, man. And dude, we were flying. It was like a glass morning, just wow. And the part that I like got most scared was, and if you know, in like the summertime, dude, there's lobster buoys everywhere in Point Loma. Dude, they're everywhere.
It was October.
Or October, something like that. And, it was like, vroom, 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 storm through. I'm like, hold. I had like 4 points of freaking holding on to something. And I'm like, oh, God. We finally get there, and I'm like, trying to grab my rod here, and I grab it. And, I grabbed one of your rods.
Yeah, I had you set up.
You're like, all right, cool. Here, fish this. I didn't know what I was doing. I probably got to the bottom. Probably got bit on the way down and didn't know.
You probably did.
And then you were like, all right, here you go. Here's a fish. I'm like, oh boy. And I'm like, gosh, this thing is heavy, man. And I see it, and dude, it's like a 5-pound sand bass. And I'm like, what? This is crazy. I was freaking out, man. And, I'll never forget that moment. And it was God, we were catching so many. And then I started catching it on my own. And it was just like it was the best. At the time, that was like a whole new world for me. I didn't know nothing. It was like, it was just brand new world. And, and I'll never forget, like, midday, Chad's like, today's slow. And I'm like, what? I'm like, today is slow? No way, man. And then...
We couldn't believe it at the time, but we know now.
Now I'd be like, geez, man, this is a slow day.
Well, I think of that day, we stopped bass fishing, and we went bonita fishing, right?
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, the bass is a little bit slow today, even though we're catching them almost every cast, but, and a lot of 3 and 4 pounders and a couple 5s. And then I was like, yeah, there's some bonita around. You'll enjoy catching some bonita.
After a while, bonita fishing, it kind of slowed down a bit. Slowed down to me when we weren't catching them, every single cast. And then, Chad's like, all right, we're going to go rock fishing. And I'd never been rock fishing before. I was kind of like, okay, this is new. I was like, wow, this is cool. So we get there, and I see on the graph, I'm like, wow, 250 feet. I'm like, I never fished this deep at all. And, Chad's like, all right, here's a different rod. And I think it was like double 1.5s or something. I don't know. And, I dropped down, and, I was a dumb kid. I didn't know yet. I wasn't that good at knowing when my bait was on the bottom. So, I was just kind of letting it sink forever. Like, there was no, like, stop to it. And I was kind of like, oh, this is weird. And I'm like, I'm not hitting the bottom, Chad. And he's like, all right, well, just keep letting it sink. And then after a while, he kind of showed me, like, all right, you got to do this to get it to go to the bottom. And I was like, oh, okay, I see what we're doing here. And I eventually got a nice red, and I was over the moon, man. It was just pulled so freaking hard, and it was just something I never experienced before. And kind of sheep's head, that was really, really cool. I really very much enjoyed that. And then,
well, I think the sheephead were on the second grom trip. I mean, after I enjoyed you
No,
guys so much the first time, then he's wanting the yellowtail really bad.
Yeah, no, the sheephead was on the first trip. I know for sure because afterwards we dropped it in a nasty puddle in the parking lot, and it kicked water all over my face and in my mouth.
But and then the next trip when I took you to Coronado's, because he wanted a yellowtail so bad.
Second grom trip.
And then when we got to the Coronado's, the first cast, I hooked a yellowtail and handed it to him, and he pulled on it for a while, then it just came unbuttoned. Yeah, that sucked. I was like, oh my God. And we never hooked another yellowtail the whole day. But we caught a bunch of nice sheephead that trip and lean cod.
Yeah.
We went rock fishing that time too, down south of the islands.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah,
and then it was the Jack's trip where Jack's
Why
invited
don't
you guys for his grom trip.
How was your first yellowtail?
Man, that was crazy. So Jack's, he had, it was actually the second Hookup Baits tournament ever. I think I won that one for the youth division. And Jack's, he got elected Angler of the Year, and he's like, all right, well, I want to take you with me, Cash. I'm like, all right, that's cool, bud.
Grom of the month.
Grom of the month, yeah. And Chad took him out to the pipe, same thing, like just wide open sand bass. He like stuffed a leadhead by himself, and caught like a 5-pounder, and I was like, wow, that's some cool stuff. But same thing, it kind of slowed. The pipes slowed down a bit,
later in the day.
Yeah, later in the day, and
it just goes from catching every cast to every third cast instead.
Exactly.
Scoot up on the mic, bud.
Yeah. And the thing about that was,
is this working?
Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah,
okay, just stay a little closer, bud.
Okay. But Chad's like, all right, let's go to La Jolla, and we went up there, and Jax wanted a yellowtail bad. He's like, where are we gonna catch yellowtail? And
that's what Jax was like. Like first he was like catching bass, then he's like, I want a vermilion. So then we went and caught vermilions. Then after he got bored of catching vermilions, he's like, I want a yellowtail. And then I'm like, ugh, well, yellowtail might be tough. And lo and behold, how'd it go?
Oh man! So this was nuts. This is one of the craziest things I've ever seen in my life. So we pull up to La Jolla, and he really wanted one bad. We were catching nice bass, and then Chad kind of seen a little bit the bait. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but when the bait gets on top of the water, it's all like, it's like kind of like shining almost, like shimmering almost. And Chad makes a cast out of that first cast. Oh, there's a yellow. Snapped him off, and he's kind of like, dang it. So he goes back of the boat to get another bait on, and we look, and there's just 2 football fields worth of yellowtail foaming out of the water, dude. You're watching them come out of the water on sardines.
All around the boat, any direction.
It doesn't matter where you cast, you're going to get bit, dude. And we're all like, oh my gosh. I make a cast, I hook one. I'm like, oh man, that's my first yellowtail. Well, no. Yeah, I hooked one first, and then Chad hooked one, and then Jackson's dad, or then John hooked one.
Yeah, the 3 of you guys were 1st.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my dad hooked one.
Tom was filming the whole time.
Yeah, I was just filming.
So we had 4 people hooked up. No, we had 3, and then little Jax was trying
That's
to.
his.
And I was about to hand mine over, but I knew if he was able to get a bait in the water, he would hook up.
Yeah.
And at that time, it was Jax like 8 years old, maybe 7.
Yeah, 7 or 8.
Yeah.
And finally, I just kept telling him, get your bait in the water. Get your bait in the water. Get me. And he looks over and yellowtail just boils right in front of him. You see his face light up, and he makes his cast. As soon as it hits the water, he's on immediately. Yeah, and then Tom's like, okay, now I need to get in the water. Sets the camera in the holder.
Yeah.
Boom. Now
it's all 5. Yeah, all 5-way hookup, and all 5 of them came in the boat.
I think yours and it was either his or John's came in first.
Yeah, Cash came in first.
Yeah, and I got mine in first. And I was freaking out. I'm like, oh my gosh, my first yellowtail! Oh my gosh! And Chad's still fighting his, and I think John got his in second.
Mm-hmm.
And then my dad, I can't remember the exact order of it, but I know Chad. This is what I do remember. He was doing something. He put his rod in the rod holder, kicked the gaff, got it, bit the cork out with his teeth, gaffed one of hit, it was either mine or John's fish, put it in the boat, reels in his, gaffs his, and then Jax, he was needing some help.
I gaffed yours, then I gaffed John's.
Everybody's.
While I was still fighting the yellowtail, I gaffed those 2. Yeah. Then I self-gaffed my own, and then your dad got his up. Then we got that
mine.
One. Yeah,
and
then it was all little Jax still fighting his. And of course, the biggest one of all the ones caught was little Jax hooked. So it was awesome.
Yeah, that was awesome.
But that was just, and it was right, a perfect beautiful evening. And right as we got them all 5 on the boat, got done taking the pictures, the sun was going down. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
That was a rememberable day for sure.
I watched that video like literally like just a few days ago.
Yeah, if you want to watch a feel good video,
Yeah.
that's the one to watch.
We had told somebody about it, and I'm like, we just got to watch it again. It was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, and I mean, to the uneducated angler, like they're like, oh, that's cool, it's a bull, but like they don't realize how rare that is to see them do that. And
Yeah,
especially
that amount right where it was.
And then the hook with lobster traps all around, and to get 5 hooked up and get all 5 in the boat, where 2 or 3 of the 5 were first yellowtail for people, and these
Right.
weren't small yellowtail. They're
No.
all 18, 23
They were
pounds
all
around
18,
there.
18 to 20s for sure.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah,
It was awesome.
Yeah, I had a double rig on, and I didn't think about it till after. But after I brought mine in, the other bait was broke off.
Yeah.
So it tells you it either grabbed some kelp and it broke that, or
No,
there was
one
another
grabbed it.
fish grabbed it,
Oh,
and they
yeah,
both
for sure.
popped each other off there. So, but yeah, so that was pretty awesome. So you've got to be on a couple cool grom trips.
Oh
and,
yes, definitely.
And then, what do you think the next thing that kind of pushed your fishing forward was?
After that, we after all the grom trips, and I started learning the basics, and my thing for the longest time was catching big spotties. I started fishing some tournaments, and I started doing really well. I won. I got my first angler of the year, basically spotty fishing. I had a couple bags of spotties that were almost 80 inches as a kid.
Oh yeah, that's right. The
ACC. tournament.
ACC, you got the
Angler
Angler of the Year.
Yeah, we got it together.
Yeah,
Yeah, we did.
that was your first jacket.
Yes, my first jacket. Yeah. That was really cool.
How many
That was-
Anglers
that
of
was
the
your
Year
intro-
jackets do you have?
I got 3 Angler of the Year's jackets, counting our win yesterday. I got a total of like 5 Angler of the Years. So,
Last week.
last
I'm like, man, we were competing yesterday.
Yeah, I know.
Remember,
yeah.
5 angler of the years in 2 years.
Jeez.
Basically, yeah.
yeah.
So that was your introduction of tournament fishing, was
Yeah.
the ACC tournaments.
Yeah, because
right?
it was, exactly. It wasn't like, nothing crazy, but, and then I'm not exactly sure, but I think the rookie division in Saltwater Bass Series started, it was either like, well, Chad got us into it. It started like, I think it might have been, it was a couple years ago.
It was
but,
4
years ago, yeah.
This is our 4th year.
Really?
Yeah. And Chad's like, hey, man, you should try it out. Just come out and try. And, the first tournament this is the first SBS tournament we ever fished. A fun fact, we didn't even have the bait basher. And Ryan from Slade was nice enough to be like, all right, man, you need a boat down there? No problem. I got it for you. And, we were all like, oh, man, we're really stoked to fish the tournament. We had no idea what we were doing. And, we're like, okay, let's try some areas. We got a few fish. And, then we went down to area in the South Bay, and dude, we got into a bite that was insane. Like, it was every single cast, little one. Didn't catch a single eel, DMW, but
Yeah.
Fun
it was
day of
just
fishing.
Great day of fishing.
And then just over a couple years, then it was the COVID time.
Yeah.
And that's when you guys got your crash course.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, second season was interrupted by COVID, so the MDR tournament got knocked out. And so we had like a 2-month open period that there was no tournament, right? And
Or
so
more, I think. Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
Well, we were pre-fishing into it, then the
Well,
one
then
got
when they had
knocked
the
out.
full COVID shutdown, there was no tournaments. I don't think.
Or we kept fishing after or something.
Yeah.
But that is what pushed us through it, and getting on the boat, fishing with Chad in our own boat. That was great,
Yeah.
And but we kind of did the math the other day. We were like, all right, so the first year we just totally bombed, and then which was not a bomb because we learned, you know. And then the second year, we were tripping out that we were in the top 3, and we were like, what? Like, we had no big, except that one that was when you were sick, when I had to fish alone, and I got second place. Adam just barely beat me. Thank God Adam went to the Masters, but now I got to deal with him next year because he's so good, dude. And then though we had never won one all the way. So by the end of the year, Danny Higley's like, yo, you guys are right behind us in third place. And I'm like, and we ended up in third place. So that was like really cool. And then once that kicked in the next year, we're like,
where it's on now.
if we got third place, then we're close enough to go for it, you know?
And let me give you a little bit of a backstory to our second season. So, I mean, this was the first tournament was Mission Bay in San Diego Bay. Our boat couldn't make it to San Diego Bay. If we would have wasted so much time. Dude, it was the toughest spotty fishing I've ever seen in my life.
Dude, I got tennis.
Mission Bay can get like that.
Dude, I had tennis elbow for a year from pre-fishing that winter.
Dude,
because we knew it was coming, and we knew we couldn't go to San Diego Bay.
And, you know, we just pre-fished. And there was days where you'd literally get 2 fish the whole day. He'd get one and I'd get one. You know, it was that bad. And, you know, tournament day came. We're like, all right, we'll see what we got. You know, we go down a few slips, and we're catching fish. They're not legal yet, but then I go to this one pillar. I remember it was a boat called the the Johnson or something. I flip up in there with like 8-pound test, and I just hook one. I'm like, no, that's a big one. I'm like, Dad, get the net. I'm reeling. I see it, and I'm like, oh my God. And you know, he gets into the net, the hook flies out. I'm like, oh my God.
Dude, that was the most memorable spotty catch in a tournament ever for me.
That was a pig. Cash
nailed it at the pillar. When we know he's on 8-pound test or 6-pound, I think 6 or 8, whatever. Really light line, and it came up like a largemouth bass does, and it was coming up towards the keel of a sailboat, and we're like, and then that's when we got the first shot that it was like a really good one.
Yeah.
And it boom turns over and goes back down, and he's all, get the net, and then I get the net and I see it coming back up again, and it just turns and peels again. So it was like 2 gnarly runs. Finally, it gets close, and I scooped it. Just like he said, the bait was laying in the net when we got the fish into the deck. So he played it just right. And that was big fish for the year for spotties for that.
Was big fish for the year. And you know, we...
$500 spotty cash. There you go.
$500 spotty, about, you know, $500 spotty and, you know, a pair of Costas. Can't beat that.
Nice. That is so cool. And then from there, Angler of the Year.
We Angler of the Year that
Angler
year.
of the Year again.
Yeah, that was pretty great. So,
and then now next year, you guys are moving to the Masters.
Yeah.
Well, when we won Angler of the Year, we were like super stoked. But we're like, I think Cash had said, we're the champions. And I go, well, actually, you're not a champion unless you've defended your title. So that was kind of our motivation to see if we could do it again, because then we'd figure we're a true champion has defended their title. So now, bud, champions. But it's only fair, you know, Jerry even said, like, hey, he really wants the teams that have been doing it a while to look at themselves in the Rookie League, because the Rookie League and the Saltwater Bass Series is that. It's for
it's to get people in.
It's your introduction.
So they can have a chance at winning. You
Totally.
know. It's no fun playing if you have no chance of winning.
Right.
So
we're going to
studs
go
like you in there.
Well,
like,
I don't know about that, but we're going to go play with the big guys next year, which will be really cool. We're ready to eat some humble pie. We didn't do all the, you know, math or comparisons on this year, but I do know the 2 that we won this year would have put us in second place on 2 of the tournaments. So I mean, we're not out of it, but we got a lot to fight for to make the championship. So that's a good goal, you know. And our next goal is a 20-pound bag. That's what we want, a 20-pound bag. We got close.
You ain't gonna move up without challenging yourself.
Nope. So
that's awesome. You guys will do just fine.
Yeah.
I would get your boat running better though.
Yeah, well, the money.
Hopefully, you win the motor at the championship. That's the plan.
We get the motor. We got some money already from that last win for the trailer.
It's going to be a lot tougher for you already. At least a working boat would be great.
And I think that that's a goal of mine. We'll got a couple months to get that ready afterwards. So.
Oh, very cool. Well, I think we pretty much covered everything. Yeah, you're a stud, Cash. I loved watching you develop from a cat fisherman up to tournament bass angler. You know, and Angler of the Year 5 times.
Calico stud.
And same with you, Tom. I mean, both of you have been sponges with the knowledge that I shared with you guys, and always been very appreciative of the knowledge. And it's easy to let somebody know all your little secrets when they're appreciating it. You know, it's and when they actually use it, it's so it's been a joy for me also, watching your guys' journey and being a small part of it. So.
Well, we thank you guys very much for every opportunity you guys have always given us, a leg up or encouragement or whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you and JoJo and the whole Hookup Baits team, and really anybody that's ever we get a lot of positive feedback from people that are just like Instagram acquaintances to just like, we have a huge group of friends now from fishing such a huge area, and we really thank all them for everybody kind of roots for us. And I think everybody wants to see the slow boat come in and, put a hurting on them. So we do our best to try to make it happen.
I know how many times I hear, I want to be an ambassador like Cash. So you have a lot of kids wanting to be you. So keep up the good work.
All right. Well, thank you.
Cool. Thanks, guys.